You are live, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Russo. All right, Council, I'd like to call this regular council meeting of September 26th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion? Councilor Cherry, Councilor Stephenhurst, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 12th, 2023? Someone want to make that motion? Councilor Lucio, Councilor Orlando, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to announcements from the mayor. Just going to say that most of council and Mr. Parliament were down at UBCM last week. Long meetings. We had I think 14 separate meetings discussing 17 issues, not including the resort communities collaborative meetings that Mr. Parliament and I had, and other councillors went on to other speakers. So it was definitely beneficial. Appreciate all of you weighing in and giving input. And yeah, good to be back home. All right, we're going to move on to number 8A, Multiplex Steering Committee Terms of Reference. Someone want to lead that conversation, or you just want me to put this motion on the table and we discuss it?
I'll put it on the table.
Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, the staff continue to work on developing the terms of reference for the multiplex steering committee based on discussion and report back at a future council or committee of the whole meeting.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Orlando?
Yeah, I'm willing to, unless Councilor Palmer wants to go first, sorry for.
No, go
Yeah,
for it.
okay. Yeah, I'm willing to support this. Just for a bit of background for people listening, Committee of the Whole Council discussed a proposal from staff as to the constituency of a steering committee that would take sort of guide the process over the next year or so. There was discussion at the Committee of the Whole about expanding that committee to include a number of different groups to sort of widen the lens, as you say, and look at things like gender equity or different user groups. At the time I spoke personally to things like trying to be successful in this process wherever it ends up, and my personal belief that it would be more successful the more stakeholders we have at this point, even if it means sort of an slightly unwieldy, bigger committee in the meantime. I think that will result in having more champions at the table. Another thing, I don't know if anyone else wants to talk first. I want to add an additional motion for discussion in addition to this one. So I'm not sure procedurally if you guys want to, if that's okay. So
sorry.
We have a motion on the table,
Yeah.
so we need to vote through this one to add anything after. Do you want to discuss what he wants to discuss?
So through your worship to Councillor Orlando, I believe Ms. Donato is going to bring a report forward on a revised terms of reference. The motion on the table right now is a recommendation from Committee of the Whole.
okay. It's not really. It's on the topic of the arena, not specifically. I'm happy to support this one as it is, but add an additional one as well. So.
Yeah, just get past the confusion. So just speaking to the motion, Councillor Orlando, I had a brief discussion with him that's regarding the public process. And so I think that would be a motion that he's putting on after this. Just further to anticipating that, but also the public engagement. We've spent quite a bit of time and resources in public engagement already, but it's certainly nowhere near enough. And that's I think the intent behind the steering committee is to get more community resources. And I guess as an individual councillor, just speaking to the community as a whole, we do want to hear from individuals.
Absolutely.
And this is going to be ongoing for some time. Definitely these kind of resolutions, it's another little micro step towards the potential of a new multiplex. but certainly no decisions are made, but it's another little micro step heading that direction. So yeah, thanks.
Good. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I am in support of this motion. I'd also like to reiterate what I said at the committee of the whole meeting last week, 2 weeks ago. That I'd like to show interest and nominate myself to sit on this committee as a representative of council. If there's nobody else interested at a future date. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. And then any other comments on the motion on the table? Okay, I'll call a question on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? No. Motion's carried unanimously. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Orlando. You have a secondary motion you would like to put on the table?
Yeah, Your Worship, this is something I just managed to sort of think about today, and I've only managed to talk to a couple councillors about it. This is me putting forward a motion, a non-binding motion in principle. So there's no legal ramifications for this, but basically what it is that that council commit to a referendum process for any borrowing that may arise through this project. So I don't know if commit is too strong of a word, or favor or something like that.
I'll second it with the commit.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So the intent is that it's non-binding. If it is in any way binding, I don't want it to be that, but basically, by way of explaining myself, inevitably, no matter how much funding we manage to raise for this, or you know, how good a job we do at offsetting costs, the law says that we must consult residents for the borrowing specifically. So we must figure out how much money we need to borrow for this project and ask them for approval. And there's generally two ways we can do that, which is the alternative approval process, which requires 10% of registered electors, if I'm correct here from memory, to write in against borrowing. Or there is a full referendum process where basically it's a referendum, yes or no. Everyone who is entitled to vote can come down and vote yes or no on the project. Now, my thinking right now in raising this issue right now and raising this is, as I said all along, I want this project to be successful. That's a key thing for me. I'm a bit agnostic onto what the final form of it will be, but I want to see this process be successful. I feel that by sort of raising the bar for ourselves to that point of knowing that we're going to require a full referendum will help us raise the bar in our process by seeking to be inclusive, by getting more voices on board, by expanding the committee, by hearing what they have to say, by being putting critical focus on what type of facility we're proposing, in order to get as many champions on board for whatever final project we do, and what could be, and I could be wrong, the most expensive capital project the city's ever done. I don't know in history, but we're up there definitely in the cost of this project. Conversely, I feel that leaving the alternative approval process on the table at this point would be a mistake, because number one, I think alternative approval process is really appropriate for a lot of different processes, including small things, bridge funding, that kind of stuff, really small decisions that are non-controversial. However, I feel that generally speaking, people don't pay as much attention to what we're doing as we think they might, and that this could sort of come in the back door for a very big borrowing ask that will have real ramifications down the road after the decision for people's taxation and what the cost is for them. And I feel that, if, for example, we failed at the AAP, that will create a bitter pill for going forward to the referendum. So I'd prefer to go to the referendum. And I think in the interim, that will really raise the bar in terms of how we go about this process and how we are creative and thinking about how we can be successful, how we can be inclusive, and how we can also be fiscally minded in how we approach the project. So, and I just want to reiterate to everybody to be very clear, I'm looking for success here, and I'm really trying to do that. What I'm trying to avoid is getting down a road and having to backtrack, or getting a long distance and having doing it, or having to redo things, or not accepting the feedback from people and adjusting course and getting to a position that ultimately fails. I want success, and I think this is a way to do it. So thank you so
Appreciate
much.
that. Mr. Parliament, do you have any comment?
No, other than I never looked at any other alternative but a referendum on such a sizable capital
Right.
project, so I fully concur.
Okay. All right, any other discussion around the table? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? You're in favor, Councillor Cherry?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to 11A staff reports. Community Resilience Initiative grant application. Mr. DeRosa, do you have a bit of a presentation on this? Or would you like me to just put the motion on the table and we ask you questions?
Whatever your desire is, Mayor.
Well,
I can speak to it, or I can just answer.
I wouldn't mind hearing a presentation.
Yeah,
for it.
that's exactly what I was going to ask for. So if you could definitely give us the benefit of your comments, appreciate that.
Absolutely, Your Worship. So the application that's coming forward is for the Community Resiliency Initiative. It's for the Fire Smart project, but it's also heavily weighted to what's now the Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. So taking from what used to be the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, shifting over to the CWRP, so we'll be referring to that in the future. So it's going to be a lot of work to plan for the future. We all saw what happened at local communities in the Okanagan. Also, I think there was some Enterprise also in the Northwest Territories, I think it was, experienced some similar things as we did. So this is going to be quite important moving forward. And so one of the things, if I understand correctly, we do need to get into this process with the CRI this year so that we can apply for those fundings down the road to continue this. I'm not sure what the ramifications would be if we did not receive the grant as it's applied for. So we're moving forward with this. I think Mr. Simon also has a project in 2024, 2025 for a development permit area, which would be involving the wildfire Fire Smart and building construction methods that are more resistant to wildfire. So that's what this is all about. And as all grants, we need your permission to make this application so that you understand what we're doing. I can speak to, we have the capacity in place to roll out this grant should we receive it. So we have Ms. Markley is our Fire Smart coordinator right now through that CT grant that we had.
Right.
And so this would be a continuation of that. So 100% funding up to 200,000. City does not have to kick in anything.
That's perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And having spoken with Ms. Marfleet regarding this fire smarting and community fire smarting, I'm supportive of that sort of thing. So I want to put this motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Lucille.
I move that submission of an application to the UBCM Community Resiliency Investment Program 2023 Fire Smart Community Funding and supports for $190,295.51 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councilor Stapleton. Any further discussion on the motion, Councilor Palmer?
I had a few more questions.
Sure.
So I did briefly look through it. So when's the deadline for the application for this?
If I'm not mistaken, it is the 28th or the 30th. It's not, yeah, it's the 28th
Of this year?
of this month.
Okay, so this is for the 2023 intake?
Oh, so yes, you're
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
The work would be undertaken in 2024.
Okay, because looking on the site, there is also an intake for next year. So, and so that just leads to the second question, which there's two parts. I would be assuming if we were not eligible for some reason, then we would probably apply for the 2024 intake.
Through your worship, to Councillor Palmer. Yes, the current intake is for the 2024 year. And they're also taking for 2 years right now to include a 2024, 2025. So they could do a 2-year grant. We want to get the CWRP done before we take that next step, because we believe there's going to be other funding that we want to perhaps move in a certain direction, depending on how that goes. We also want to be able to include additional funding for the work that Mr. Simon is going to be doing with the building permit development area.
Right.
So we felt confident that we would get in this year, and then potentially next year make a 2-year application. But we're confident that we're going to get both.
Okay, yeah, so I anticipate this will be fully subscribed from the province. I don't know which community would be applying for the funding, especially 100% in view of what's happened this year. In the event that we don't get the full funding, what happens?
Through your worship, I think there's several options. We could scale back and fund internally from the city. There's potential to also go through the Columbia Basin Trust grant application process again with a similar grant for the similar work that they're also doing these grants as well at a smaller scale. So there is a couple of options there. It would be much more advantageous for us to be successful with a community resiliency initiative grant.
So, and then I guess the reason for my question is we're kind of a little bit late to the game because it just closes in a few days here, and the intake was the beginning of April. I'm not sure where other communities were, but that's why I started wondering how that might work. That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief Rosa? Seeing none, I am going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Good luck, Chief. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 11B, UBCM conference summary. Mr. Parliament.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to highlight in 3 minutes or less some of the things that I participated in to share with council and the public. Most of it I found to be of good news. First of all, I want to thank the newcomers on council that attended their first UBCM and Councillor Stapenhurst, Cherry, and Lucio. I thought their participation with all the ministry meetings was exceptional. They certainly weren't intimidated. They asked the tough questions that Revelstoke's been asking for some time, and I think they assisted the mayor very well. And it was also nice to have a team approach where Councillor Palmer attended most of the resolutions and other areas, being a veteran of UBCM. We had 13 scheduled meetings over 3.5 days, but the ones that sort of pointed out a promise for me and Revelstoke is we had a very interesting discussion with forestry and municipal affairs and the upcoming REDIP application, which the city will be applying for funding for. We asked the pointed question, would our utility be eligible for REDIP funding? And our utility being our green utility, our district energy system that we call RCEC, the Revelstoke Energy Corporation. And the answer is yes. They encouraged us to apply for REDIP funding, which we will be doing, because it all relates to the forestry sector and the transition of what we currently have in our mill and what the future looks like. And because our utility is tied to forestry in the fact that we use wood waste, they are encouraging us to apply, and not for the full 500,000, but maybe there's a couple $100,000 that we could funnel back into our district energy system. Speaking of which, councillors were armed with these. I know the folks on the screen can't see them, but we handed out Thursday, October 19th, 2023. We are hosting a BioHeat Summit. The city of Revelstoke is partnered with the Community Energy Association. I asked elected officials to hand these out to other communities. We expect an excellent participation. We're putting together the agenda. It will be the same format as the Housing Summit. But this will be geared to small communities on what it takes to transition off fossil fuels and move toward green energy and the challenges by doing such, because as everyone knows, it doesn't pay for itself, but it's the right thing to do. And we met with different ministries and invited them also to let their senior staff know. And if they want to join us online, that's great. If you want to come to Revelstoke, we're going to start with a tour of our facility at 4, end at 5, and then the summit itself will start at 6. I met with Fortis. Fortis will be attending. We told Fortis that we would like to see them look at this as a possible green initiative under their umbrella to commit to green energy. And they're very interested, as well as other industry players. I had very good meetings, the mayor and I, with the RCC group, the Resort Communities Coalition. We had meetings on Monday and Friday, where we shared sort of the 14 resort municipalities and their success of RMI funding and what they've done. And we had Revelstoke represented with the Dark Horse event, and also other communities and what they've done. Interesting note in those meetings that I took away is the 14 resort municipalities in British Columbia generate roughly $340 million in provincial revenues. And the monies we get back out of those direct revenues that we collectively generate is 14 million dispersed over 14 municipalities. That's the equivalent of 2 weeks. First 2 weeks of January, they collect that amount of money, and that's what we get back. And so we had a robust discussion with the minister on how to increase those RMI funds, and at least to the month of January. You know, the province can keep 11 months. We'll take 1 month instead of 2 weeks. And if we were to get that, that would double the RMI funding from 14 to 28 million. So we had discussion about finding ways to work with the minister. I thought the meeting with the minister was great. She certainly heard the message. It was well participated. Every one of the 14 municipalities were there, both CAOs and mayors. Rossland, met with Rossland, very interesting project I think we can piggyback on. They built a new city hall and they partnered with BC Housing. And so when I asked their CAO, Brian Teasdale, the framework of that deal, they were looking at $2.6 million city hall on their own. BC Housing was looking at a project. They got in the room and greater minds prevailed, and they partnered up and built one facility that houses both. So they've got city hall on the main and they got affordable housing above. I was thinking, boy, there's our new council chambers. Wouldn't that be great if we could do something cool like that? So Rossland will be sharing some of their information with us. Met with CPKC and Mike Lavecchio, had a discussion about our new proposed multi-purpose facility, and that I personally are challenging CPKC to be at the table and discuss that. This new facility would benefit their workers as much as it would benefit all residents. We had a very interesting discussion about the history of both CP and the city of Revelstoke, and I believe we've got the appetite for both parties to sit down and discuss what this new facility could look like. No promises, but we certainly agreed to meet again, and I certainly shared with CP the locations that we're all looking at, and implored them to have a second look at their potential site. Again, no commitments, but we will be meeting again. BC Housing, the last one I want to share is BC Housing was very clear in terms of the situation where we cannot, the city, the housing society, the community cannot find an operator. Their message was simple. If you have a housing authority, that can be the operator. The municipality can be the operator. So they were very pleased to hear that we're pursuing this possible model of an authority. They were very clear that if you had an authority and that authority met the conditions of an operator, which I know they would when you put the key people on an authority, they're saying, let's move forward. So they were very pleased to hear that we're going down that route with the feasibility study to fill that need to find a qualified operator for some of these projects. And we talked in particular about 4th Street, about the Downey property. I know other councilors may want to weigh in on that. So I thought we had some good discussion on that as well. So yeah, no, overall, well-attended event. Over half the delegates were first timers. So roughly 2,500 delegates first-time delegates at UBCM, so there was a lot of fresh faces and new faces. For someone old like me that's been going to these events for some time, it was quite refreshing. With that, that concludes my verbal report, Mr. Mayor, and take any questions or feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have some further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parliament. Council, any comments or questions? Mr. Palmer?
Yeah,
Councilor Palmer, then Councilor Char.
Just questions to, or some comments to the CEO. Thank you very much for the verbal and I certainly enjoyed a lot of them, and even the ones having been to a lot of UBCMs. It's a bit of reticence, quite frankly, on some of them going, because have I heard this before? But the reality is I did learn new things, including the keynote speaker I thought was outstanding, and I've heard too many over the years and kind of know the storyline, how that goes, but it was inspiring for me, and about asking the right questions in the right place at the right time. And I think that's, just was a reminder for me to be asking questions and continuing to learn. That when we talk about multiplex places, asking the community those questions as well. Just further on the bioenergy or the biomass form. I didn't have enough cards. I quickly ran out of them, and there was definitely interest. So I'll touch base with you. But I also talked to Fortis, and so from another angle, so there's a bit of triangulation there. But there's definitely a number of small communities. Just maybe a little bit on biomass or local energy. The problem, the reason biomass hasn't been viable is it's been undervalued by the province and through the Utilities Commission that's favoring mega projects like Site C that does massive environmental damage instead of doing local energy where you don't have to transport. And so that issue of feed-in tariffs, maybe that'll come back again, because these should be viable. It creates local energy. It benefits the economy of the local area. It's much greener, and it's been very, very successful. Little micro plants in Europe, very, very, very successful, economically successful. And it's this mindset that we have as a province that we can only do these massive projects that have done so much damage. One of the ones that was a take home for me, a big one that I'm going to be pondering more is on, we talk about asset management or water and sewer and that aspect. I did attend a forum on natural assets and the management of natural assets. Many communities have jumped on board. We're behind on that in valuing what our natural assets. I spoke to that before, and it's already on our council priority list as far as a couple of those natural assets. So it's something that I anticipate that I'll be bringing up in the future. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks to our CEO, Mr. Parliament, for that discussion. I would like to see a committee of the whole meeting in the future to unpack all the different avenues of funding that we should be going after. I think we should be going after. I would also like to add that Premier Eby did make an announcement for $61 million in funding to assist in meeting the new provincial development and zoning changes, help to address the housing crisis. I think that's something that we need to go after, some of that funding, as well as he made an announcement for $4.75 million for rural firefighting teams across the province. I believe that our community will qualify for that, and I would like to encourage anybody in that room and department heads to go after that funding. Oh, and one more thing, Mr. Parliament, I'm hoping you could talk about your conversation with another municipality about generating money through tourism parking fees.
Right. I remember her face. I don't remember the community. What's the community there, Counselor Terry?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that, but yeah,
$1
flipped it back on me.
$1.2 million in parking revenue downtown. It'll come to me. Anyway, she was saying and shared with a couple of us that they generate roughly $1.2 million a year in downtown parking revenues as a means to offset all the costs that we're facing. And at first it was very controversial. And anyways, it was met with long-term success. And it was a small community. Now it escapes me. It'll come to me.
It's Roslyn.
Roslyn. There
I
you
believe
go.
it.
So another resort municipality. Thank you. And I was surprised to hear that number because I thought, okay, I've been to Roslyn. If that's 1.2 million in Roslyn, that's gross. They've got expenses to come off that. I don't know what the net amount is, but let's call it $1 million or 900,000 for a small community. I was surprised. And so we asked them to also send some information to us. I'm not advocating that we go to paid parking, just saying there is a pot of money there that, you know, at the end of the day, Roslyn decided that's something we have to pursue to help offset, especially bylaw enforcement costs, you know, all the challenges that resort municipalities have. So thank you for that reminder.
Councillor Staples?
No comment from me, sir.
No comment? All right, just a couple things. One of the two minister meetings we had, we went, Mr. Black, we spoke with Minister Kang about more funding for wastewater treatment, and she brought up the Growing Communities Fund where she just gave us money, and I said I don't want to use that money, I want to go after other money. There'll be projects that there'll be overruns and whatnot won't go through. And she wasn't really going to say too much until she finally conceded that maybe at the end of the fiscal year, there may be funds there. And if that comes forward, we'll be able to reapply. So, you know, there's there. We know that we can do this. Speaking with the district director for regional district of East Kootenay, Invermere got some funding through SARA, and one of the community entities that applied for some funding wasn't able to use it. They expended part of that for their planning. That money went back into the kitty, and another group in that community applied for it and got it and had to pay the first one the difference in money. But we know that there's that ability, so know that that's there. When we spoke with Minister Baines, I wanted to talk about bridging to retirement, Minister of Labor. We talked about the local people and how that's working. So we know that locally 10 people have received cumulatively 427,000. And last year when I met with them, we talked about when they apply for this funding, they're not able to work for 18 months. And we said that doesn't work for our members of our community. They might be young enough to take the bridging to retirement, but they may want to go into another field of work. And Minister Baines says, well, you asked for that last year, so we changed it. So people can't work in forestry for 18 months, but they can go into another industry. So I just want to say that some of these things that we do at UBCM are beneficial. And then the last thing I'll go into is our conversation again with the RCMP. We keep asking about more highway patrol officers. Last year, when we met with Deputy Superintendent McDonald and said there may be a change in Surrey, so we're willing to take those police officers into our fold. And he kind of chuckled and he said, I don't know whether there'll be a change, but we'll listen to that. And I said, well, we need some more highway patrol because our municipal members are ending up on the highway assisting there. Anyway, this year timing was right. When I asked again about what was happening in the RCMP, there is some positions that they have not been able to fill in the highway patrol section up north for the last 5 years. So they're really willing to recommit 3 new positions to the Revelstoke area. And so we'll keep pushing for that, and hopefully that'll come to fruition sooner than later. So definitely a benefit to going, and some other benefits as well, but we'll talk further at a committee of the whole about all of this stuff. But just want to say grateful for all of you that gave your input, and especially to our executive assistant Janet, who put together packages for us all. Those are beneficial to all of us, and when we went into the meetings, we were well prepared. So thank you for that. I am going to move on now to 13A, Communications, Tourism Initiatives Committee meeting minutes. Councilor Orlando, do you have anything to say on those meeting minutes?
Your worship, yeah, thank you, I do. So this is just by way of a brief update. This is the Tourism Initiatives Committee minutes from July 27th, 2023. This is a committee that meets to discuss various initiatives, often partial funding for community projects that are eligible for RMI funding. At this meeting, there was funding allocated for Revelstoke Cycling Association's Boulder Climb Trail, Greenbelt Society's Winter Trail Grooming, RMR Natural Tour Selection, some funding for Luna Festival, Jordan River, the Paddle Association Festival, as well as the recent Garlic Festival. And there was also some other presentations at the committee. Yeah, it's fairly focused mandate committee, and that's mostly what we do. So
Great, appreciate it, thank you. Any other comments from council regarding TIC minutes? Seeing none, Ms. Russo, any questions from the press?
No questions from the press, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. All right, council, I'd like to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1 G and K of the community charter. Someone make that motion. Councilor Staples, Councilor Lucelle, all in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back in.
Hey guys, although you are muted, I just